This is not a trick question. Did Russian gangsters in New York extort a guy they were hired to kill, or did they steal 10,000 pounds of chocolate? If you said they did both, then you are absolutely correct. Welcome to Brooklyn. So I told a random guy that I would love to make a video on the Russian Mafia because he brought up a valid point. I've insinuated at least twice in the past that Vladimir Putin is not only associated with the Russian mob, but that he's the boss essentially. But I've never gone into detail, so let's do a brief overview since this video isn't all about him. Alright, so the guy that coined the term Mafia state, Alexander Litvinenko, was a Russian spy that went against Putin and defected to the UK, where he told British intelligence all of his secrets. And then he was poisoned, of course, and he's famously known as the guy who solved his own murder. And it probably wasn't that hard to put together. But Alexander also accused Putin of assisting in drug trafficking from Afghanistan to Russia during his time in the FSB, and also having a good relationship with Simeon Mogilevich, who the EU and the United States describe as the boss of most Russian mafia syndicates in the world. He's on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list, and he lives in the Russian capital. Although his title is debatable, since it's highly unlikely that most Russian crime syndicates acknowledge him as leader. He is, however, powerful enough for the FBI to call him the most dangerous gangster in the world due to his long reach. And he was also an early investor in Trump Tower. But the connections between Putin and the Russian Mafia are pretty clear if you believe the whistleblowers. But in Brooklyn, the connection between the Russian Mafia goes back decades. Of course, the Russian Mafia came to New York, but the term Russian Mafia is just an umbrella term for multiple organizations. And the organization operating in Brooklyn that does everything from mass chocolate theft to murder for hire is known as the Shulaya enterprise, named after Shulaya, the Vor v Zakonie, which roughly translates to thief in law, or thief with code. Now, a Vor v Zakonie is a person that is considered to be a professional criminal that enjoys an elite position among other mobsters, on the streets and in prison, with the boss even having a former world boxing champion from Georgia as his enforcer. And this one group is not only active in New York, but also in Florida, New Jersey, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. They set up a nightclub to make drug trafficking easier. They rigged slot machines in Vegas and Atlantic City, and as if that wasn't making enough money, they had a woman whose job it was to seduce, drug, and extort men. The FBI indicted 27 people involved in this organization, and 2 of these men were Boris and Boris. Now one day, some guy in New York City found these 2 men paying him a visit, and they came to inform him that a Russian businessman had approached them with a contract to kill him for $100,000. And the contract was offered to the other Boris, Boris Nayfield. Now, being a nice guy, the other Boris told the guy in New York City, "I can set up a meeting between you guys, see if we can work something out." And as if the guy wasn't already terrified, Boris let him know that he had already been paid half of the money put on his head. So the victim was lucky that Boris had so bravely intervened to try to save his life. So the deal was, the potential victim had to pay Boris $125,000 so that his friend wouldn't take the hit and kill him. And again, this is just one group in Brooklyn. In 2016, someone broke into a building on Voorhees Avenue in Brooklyn and set it on fire. 4 men were eventually arrested for it, a Ukrainian, a Moldovan, and 2 naturalized American citizens, with one of these Americans strangely having the same last name as the Israeli mobster tied to the major sports gambling and illegal casino case in California. But even though Russian and Israeli crime syndicates have worked together in the past, allegedly, I didn't find any proof that this guy and the Israeli crime family Gershman were related in any way. But turns out, a unit in that building was actually being used as an illegal casino. An illegal casino that Victor Zellinger didn't approve of. So, as the leader of his own syndicate that operated all over Brooklyn, he apparently ordered the fire to be set. And he actually escaped to Switzerland, but they extradited him. Now, Victor wasn't a Vor v Zakonie, but according to the Eastern District of New York, he was linked to some of them, so since he operated in the same neighborhood as the Shulaya enterprise, I have to assume that Victor may have answered to, or was at the very least associated with Razdan Shulaya. But Leonid Gershman, one of the men sent to start the fire, wasn't just one of Victor's hitmen, because apparently he had his own group of guys that took orders from him. Back in 2012, a stash house belonging to Gershman was robbed, and he suspected that it was the Kavkaz Nation. Now, the Kavkaz are a group of Russians, Armenians, Uzbeks, and Azerbaijanis, and they can be found in the Manhattan Beach and Brighton Beach neighborhoods of Brooklyn. And law enforcement has also associated them with the Bloods, but this could be a mistake, as they might be referring to another group in NYC called Pure Armenian Blood, which I don't believe is an actual blood set, but rather just an Armenian crime syndicate in New York. But a year later, a guy working as a low-level courier for Gershman told him that he had been robbed when making a delivery. And obviously Gershman didn't believe him, so he threatened to give him a
$150 across his face, man. Blood everywhere, shit gushing.
So, in order to save his face, literally, the courier met up with Natik Nizamov, who was the leader of the Kavkaz. And he was one of the only people in Brooklyn powerful enough to negotiate with Gershman. And this actually worked, despite the fact that the Kavkaz were actually known for staging break-ins and drug trafficking. They even staged a prison break at Rikers Island in 2021, and they had a whole plan set up with the Armenians to sneak the Kavkaz escapee from New York to California after his escape. But this also demonstrates how the Russian Mafia is heavily intertwined with the Armenian Mafia. In California, an Armenian crime syndicate just got indicted in 2024 because one Armenian mobster hired gang members from all over the San Fernando Valley for multiple shootings that targeted another Armenian mobster for control over LA County. These two guys were leaders in the same organization, Avtoritet. And the Armenian Mafia should in no way just be looked at as a junior partner to the Russian Mafia. There was a lawyer in Beverly Hills that represented some Armenian Mafia associates that had a Homeland Security agent and an FBI special agent on his payroll, with the FBI agent giving this lawyer access to his law enforcement database in the FBI. And also, while looking through this database, the lawyer would make sure to check on his buddy, Levon the Lion, also known as the Armenian mobster that committed a billion-dollar tax fraud.
The one-time leader of the Armenian Mafia in Los Angeles was sentenced to 40 years in prison for his role in a billion-dollar scheme to rip off American taxpayers. Levon Termanzian, also known as the Lion, was convicted of conspiring with members of a polygamous sect in Utah known as the Order in one of the most audacious tax frauds in history.
But of course, many people have never heard about any of these cases because, just like the Italians, the Russian Mafia is much more active in Europe. And that's where you'll see most of the police activity involving these groups. Like in 2019 and 2020, authorities in Spain conducted raids as part of their investigation into two Russian Mafia groups money laundering in their country, the Izmailovskaya and the Sumsovskaya. And among the indicted were Alexander Grimberg, who was the president of the Marbella Football Club, and a well-known Russian mobster, Arnold Spivakovsky, who was mysteriously found dead after posting bail. But overall, it's pretty clear that as long as organizations like this can find ways to make a lot of money, then they can pretty much just have as much influence and reach as any billionaire in the country. And it seems like many of these groups in the US have been playing with millions, if not billions of dollars for decades, so just like the Italian mob, these guys can pretty much have their way in any city. The guy pinned by the FBI as the most powerful Russian mobster also runs a gas company that sells gas to Ukraine. And this is something that the former Ukrainian Prime Minister, Yulia Tymoshenko, even kind of acknowledged while she was in office. And you know, I've been putting off this video for a while because the Russian Mafia is pretty hard to find information on. But when I do research like this, I find so many stories, like the guy stealing 10,000 pounds of chocolate. And that's why I love doing videos like this, if I'm being honest. But I appreciate you guys for watching as always. We almost at 200K subscribers, man. It wouldn't be possible without any of you guys. And just remember, if you watch me, you can do what I'm doing. Whatever you want to talk about, man, just go for it. You might even learn something along the way. I know I did for sure. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.